Welcome to Fox Valley in Focus, a look at the issues and items of interest to residents of the Fox Valley. I'm Cindy Bravos. On this edition, we'll take a closer look at a national network of volunteers dedicated to this simple mission statement: we are the child's voice in court. That's the mission statement for CASA, an acronym for Court-Appointed Special Advocate. Our first guest on the program is Debi Blocker, Executive Director of CASA, Kendall County. Welcome to the program, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
This is a fascinating organization that kind of spread by wildfire after being started in 1977. Give us a little bit of a history about the first CASA.
It began actually in 1996 when the federal judge, David Sokup, was concerned about the decisions that were being made in child abuse and neglect cases. There's always more information than meets the eye, particularly in a courtroom. And he felt that the decisions that needed to be made were of such significance in a child's life that he wanted to get another set of eyes on what was happening. So he helped develop a volunteer program which became court-appointed special advocates. And these advocates would be one advocate per case, and they were assigned to find out things about where the child was going to school, how the child felt about what was going on in their lives in general, if there were any special issues that might be overlooked by an overworked case manager, so that they could then report to the court and let him know what was going on. And as you said, it caught on very quickly, and it's now in all 50 states in the U.S.
And court is an intimidating experience for an adult, so I can't even imagine what it would be like for a child. So how important is it to have a CASA who follows them throughout their case?
Well, you know, as CASAs, we make every effort to not have the children appear in court. If they're of a certain age and they wish to testify, even then, oftentimes they'll be taken into the judge's chambers to testify. But we try and make it so the child doesn't even have to appear in court, so their daily schedule's not interrupted by court dates.
Well, maybe we should back up a little bit. What are types of cases that require a CASA?
Well, in Kendall County, we handle all abuse and neglect cases, and that come into court. That's a very important distinction. We don't do anything before we're assigned by the court because we are officers of the court. So what happens is there's been a phone call made to DCFS, a hotline call perhaps, and they've been alerted to a situation in a home where it's deemed unsafe or inappropriate for the child. They send out their investigators, which has to be done within the first 24 hours. Okay. They investigate the case, and they determine whether or not it's safe for the children to be in that home or not. And depending on what the incident is, they may have a safety plan and be able to leave the home intact and leave the children there, or they might have to remove them. Then if they remove the children, they have to appear in court within 48 hours. And we call that an emergency shelter care hearing. That's when CASA is first assigned as a guardian ad litem in Kendall County to those children, and then we start our process of finding out what's going on in the case. And then there's more court cases, and Alysha can kind of cover with you what happens after that. But so that's when we first become involved. Now, not all CASA programs are guardian ad litem programs.
Okay.
There's only a few here in the state of Illinois, but what that means is the judge assigns our CASA as a guardian ad litem. And because we're volunteers and we're not attorneys, we supply our own attorneys to appear in court with us to represent those children. So we're able to speak up in court for the children.
How long has the Kendall County program been around?
It's been in existence for 14 years. It was actually started by CASA Kane County. They sort of sent over folks from there that started the board and started the program.
And as far as programs in the state, where does it range as far as size? Kendall County is?
Well, Kendall County itself is actually a small county, which I didn't realize till I started looking at a map. We're just not, mile-wise, we're just not as big as a lot of them. There's only 33 programs currently in the state of Illinois, 33 counties that have CASA programs. Illinois CASA just received a grant from the federal government that, and they're trying to bring it to all 102 counties in Illinois, because we're only serving, I think it's 30% of the children in Illinois right now with CASAs, and they'd like to bump that to 100%.
And generally, in the Kendall County program, how many children do you serve over the course of a year, or from beginning to end?
Right now, our numbers are actually up 68% from last March. Our growth has unfortunately been significant. We're at 58 children that we serve right now. As the county grows and as people become more aware of what child abuse and neglect is, we see more cases in court. Abused and neglected children are often called the forgotten children because it's not a pretty thing. People would prefer to ignore sometimes what's going on next door as opposed to reporting it. Oftentimes we'll have someone come to us and say, you know, I saw this and this going on. Do you think I should make a call? And I understand that we don't want to get involved in our neighbor's business, but making sure a child's safe is really everybody's business and everybody's responsibility. If there is something going on, a phone call needs to be made. Now, we're mandated reporters at CASA Kendall County, and obviously school teachers are mandated reporters, police officers are mandated. So there are a lot of mandated reporters, but as far as I'm concerned, everybody should be a mandated reporter.
We're going to take a quick break and continue our conversation with Debbie Blocker when we come back. Don't go away.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
I remember how much you said you liked wine. Oh.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you.
Welcome back to Fox Valley in Focus. We're talking with Debbie Blocker, who is the Executive Director of CASA Kendall County. You talked a little bit about how every state now has a CASA and how there's a national organization, but where does the money come from to run a CASA organization?
In every state it's different, but Illinois is one of 7 states that receives no state funding for their CASAs, so each county is responsible for finding ways to raise their own funding. We're blessed with a county board that gives us office space in Kendall County, and then we need to raise our funds to run the office. And while our volunteers are free, our materials for training volunteers and the staff are not, but our annual budget is right around $60,000 a year, which is considerably low if you think about the fact that we run over 35 advocates and what we do.
And the number of children that
and the number of children that we serve, more importantly. And right now in Kendall County, we're very proud of the fact that we cover every single abuse and neglect case. But that's getting harder and harder to say and do. So we have a need for increased funding, and we really need to hire a second case manager soon, because we do have national standards as to how many case managers per case. So funding
is 68% increase
yes.
in caseload too. That would be a
so it's an uphill battle always.
And so how do you generate those funds?
Well, we apply for grants, but what we've found is over the years our grants have gotten smaller and smaller because I think more and more people are looking towards funding the same way that we do. And also we do a lot of fundraising through, we have a golf outing coming up. We just had a Mardi Gras party. We're doing a new fundraiser this year. It's called Bagapalooza. It's a bags tournament that we're hosting at Oswego's Prairie Fest. And the folks over at Mogul Media here are helping us out, and it looks like it's going to be a blast. I don't know anything about bags tournaments, but so far I like what I'm seeing. It looks like we're going to have a really good time that day.
And we should probably mention the dates. Your golf outing is on
June 16th, and it's at Blackberry Oaks Golf Course. We had one of our longstanding board members, Michael Turner, passed away this last year, and we've renamed our golf outing the Michael Turner Memorial Golf Outing this year in honor of him. And that'll start at 1 o'clock. It's a shotgun start. We do a lunch before that at noon. And we need golfers, we need prizes, we need donations, and we're going to need some volunteers too. So anybody interested could contact our office. That would be great.
Okay. And you don't have to be already in relationship with CASA to do this.
No, absolutely not. We always welcome new folks.
And then the Bagapalooza?
The Bagapalooza, I think that website is actually going to go live on Monday. And it's bagapalooza.com, and you can actually sign up online and register, and it gives you all the information about the event on it.
All right, and that one is June 18th, 2 days after the golf outing.
Yes, I think June will be a busy month for me.
And people can go to your website to find out how to contact you if they're interested in making a donation or volunteering for the event.
Yes, we do have PayPal on our website. If anybody wants to make a donation, they can make it right through PayPal.
All right. You have an interesting history with CASA. You started as a CASA volunteer before you became the executive director of the organization. Give us a little bit of your personal journey.
I began with CASA I think it was 10 years ago now. A friend of mine was on the board and said that they were looking for advocates to train. And I was a stay-at-home mom and had the extra time to do something, and felt that serving abused and neglected children was something I would like to do. So I actually became an advocate, and I took on a case, and I actually became the board president, and I was on the board for 5 years. My case came to an end, and as you might be able to imagine, what we do is pretty emotional, and while we can detach to a certain point, I needed some time away. So I went on to do some other things for a while. And then it heard, someone had contacted me and told me they were looking for an executive director, and I was ready to come back if they were ready to have me. So the board hired me a few months ago, and we're off and running.
How has being a CASA volunteer changed your life?
It forces you to, I think, become more compassionate and more understanding. When you look at things on the surface, a lot of times you might make a quick judgment about what's going on. You know, there's no excuse for abuse and neglect of children. There's absolutely no excuse. But there are things that we as a society can do to help people who have less parenting skills or need some help that could go a long way in helping out those children. So I think, first of all, you can't judge a book by its cover. You know, we might see something come in and think that it's nothing and find out it's absolutely horrendous. Or we might see something come in and think, well, there's no way we can even make this work, and it does. So you just have to be more open-minded and more compassionate, and you have to be less naive too. I mean, I think when I became a volunteer and when I first worked with CASA, I believed that all people were good, and I'm afraid I don't believe that anymore.
So it's exposed you to some things you might not have ever seen before in life.
And I think I was very naive in a lot of things that I'm not anymore, unfortunately. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's someone needs to be the eyes and the ears and to be able to speak up for the children. And sometimes to speak up for those children, you have to lose some of your naivete.
Well, thanks for being here. Don't go away, because when we come back, we're going to meet Alysha Hamann, who is a caseworker at CASA Kendall County. Right after this.
Mom! Mom!
What?
You can't find Ichabod.
What?
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you.
Real men know that getting tested is the way to take care of their families. That's why real men wear gowns. For a list of the tests you need, go to ahrq.gov.
Ready. 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 It can be a little awkward when your friend tells you he's been diagnosed with a mental illness. But what's even more awkward is, if you're not there for him, he's less likely to recover.
I'm here to help, man, whatever it takes.
Welcome back. We're joined now by Alysha Hamann, who is the caseworker for CASA Kendall County. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You have a different role than a CASA advocate as a caseworker. How does your volunteer support or your volunteer base augment the work that you do as a staff member?
Well, my responsibility is the advocates in general. I'm responsible for training the advocates as well as supporting them with their court report writing as well as going to court. So if an advocate, which a lot of our advocates work full-time and aren't able to get the time off to go to court, then I'm able to step in and I'm familiar with the cases and I can help speak up for the children as well.
And when you talk about finding the advocates, where do they come from? What is the typical profile of a CASA volunteer?
Well, we don't really have a typical profile. We like anyone and everyone who is 21 years or older, can pass a background check, and really is interested in investing their time in children. They don't have to have any experience in child welfare, but just want to learn about it and want to be a part of it.
And then once they pass all those initial criteria and have the desire to do this, what kind of commitment does it require?
Well, first we ask them to go through 30 hours of training, which I myself conduct. We usually do that at night, and it could span from anywhere between 5 and maybe 8 weeks, depending on what people's schedules are. And as far as the commitment from the advocate themselves, it can run anywhere from 5 hours a month to some cases involve 5 hours a week. That's all based on the case and then the advocate's level of availability and commitment to that case.
And then how is the assignment process when you have a case that comes up? How do you determine which advocate will serve on what case?
Well, we discuss in length with all the advocates what types of cases they're most comfortable with, what age group they're most comfortable working with, and we also have our advocates driving outside of Kendall County. Even though these cases are in Kendall County, the children, for the most part, are placed outside of Kendall County. So we talk with them, how far are they willing to drive and what kind of commitment are they willing to make. And we really want to take into their account their kind of strengths that they have in working with a case.
And then once they're assigned with a case, they stay with that case through the end or through the closure process.
That's true.
And how long can that be?
Well, we'd like to think that the cases are going to be shorter rather than longer, but the reality is that a lot of times these cases go on for at least 2 years. They can go on for shorter amounts of time, but we have seen 2 to 3 years being the commitment.
And Debbie talked a little bit about it, but how does a volunteer avoid that emotional attachment to the child that they're representing or advocating for?
Well, I think one of the important parts about being an advocate is that you do have that emotional ability to really feel for these children and what they're going through. But what we always say in training is that you are part of the forward motion. You're not part of what happened to them in the past, but you're part of their solution, which kind of helps you in that proactive role versus worrying about this is what they went through and that's so traumatizing, but then we get to step in and we get to help kind of engage in services that the children might need and then move forward, which is the direction we always want to be heading.
What's the ratio between male and female volunteers in the program?
We do have a few more female volunteers than male, but we are willing, we love having advocates of all ages, of course over 21, and male and female. We do see that, especially with some of our older teenagers that are boys, it is really nice to have that kind of male role model in their life. Women can do it great as well, but it is nice when we have that availability with male advocates.
And what about continuing education? You talked about the preliminary 30 hours that's required, but are there things that change in the court system that would require someone to do a continuing education?
We do have continuing education hours that we're required to complete, and those are 12 hours a year. Now that may seem like a lot for a volunteer, but the things we get to do is we meet every few months. I go over any updates, whether there's a judge change or anything like that. We may have the state's attorney come in, we may do some mock trials. which is a lot of fun. We go to movies. We read books that pertain to the issues that we're dealing with. So all those things, which watching a movie with your family is a pretty easy thing to do on a Friday night, but then it also counts as continuing education.
And so it's a way to engage these volunteers during the course of their being active in the program.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're dealing with these cases, there's always the issue of confidentiality. So I can't come to you and say, this is what's going on and I'm really frustrated. But as advocates, we have this big CASA family, and so we get together and talk about the issues that are going on with our cases, and maybe someone's had an experience or a direction to help us go with our case.
And so that means that that stays within the context of the CASA family.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about some of the cases, a little bit about the training as well. So, and we also need to mention too that I'm guessing you're going to be part of the events that are coming up, the fundraisers that are coming up.
Yes.
So we encourage people to do that and volunteer. And are you in need right now for volunteers?
Yes, we are.
For CASA advocates as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. I would imagine with a caseload that's grown by 68%, the need is great. And we need to raise funds too so that you can hire a second caseworker.
That's right.
All right. Don't go away. We'll be back to continue our conversation in just a moment.
It begins innocently enough. You don't return a phone call. You break a date at the last minute. But in fact, it's the beginning of a pattern. And soon, your friend with mental illness realizes you're avoiding them. But what if you knew that your friendship was the key to their recovery? Would you still lock them out of your life?
Whatever we deny or embrace, for worse or for better, we belong together.
Underneath everything we are, underneath everything we do, we are all people, connected, interdependent, united. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.
We're gonna rob your house tonight.
Don't come closer. I have rabies.
Don't you wish there were warnings to protect you from life's risks? With diabetes, there is one. It's called A1C, a simple blood test that helps measure your risk of serious complications. Learn more at diabetesaonc.org.
Welcome back. We're talking with Alysha Hamann from CASA Kendall County, and we're talking about ways to educate people about child abuse and how CASA can make a difference in the lives of abused and neglected children. And this is relevant because April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. Mm-hmm. A lot of the work you do could be avoided if people could prevent the child abuse and the neglect to begin with. So how important a role is that?
You know, it's very important. I think educating people, parenting is very hard. I don't think there's anyone out there who will say parenting is the easiest thing that I've ever done. And so, but what happens is you have a stressful parenting situation, and then you have other issues on top of that. Domestic violence, other abuse issues, substance abuse issues, and it just escalates maybe the lack of parenting or lack of knowledge. And so it's really important for us to be able to educate people on what is effective parenting and to understand that it is okay that you're feeling stressed because it is stressful.
And how do you do that? How do you reach people who might be at risk?
Well, I think even in your neighborhood, in your community, just being aware of the neighbors around you and the situations they're going through and being willing to lend that helping hand. I think all of us have been in situations where we've needed extra help and maybe had family or friends to help, but we're dealing with some people who don't have those resources. And so just reaching out for people. You can't solve their problems, but you can just be that relief maybe for them.
And not look the other way.
Right.
Okay. Share your story, how you decided to make the journey to become CASA.
Well, when I was finishing my undergraduate work at South Dakota State University, I interned with East Central CASA, which is the program that covers a few counties around Brookings, South Dakota. And I also worked with the Flandreau-Santee Sioux tribe, which was a really interesting experience. And I gained this perception of it takes a village to raise a child. And so in the back of my mind, I've always wanted to be part of that village who is caring for these children around me. when I graduated, I worked as a foster care case manager, and then actually moved to Kendall County, got married, and wasn't working in child welfare, but really felt that missing part in my life, that thing that I had always wanted to be a part of. So I became an advocate for CASA and have been an advocate for 3 years. And then last fall, I was talked to, and they were looking for a case manager, and so that's how I got here.
And what differences, I mean, you said that when a CASA cannot be in court that you will step in, but what differences are there between being a CASA and being a professional caseworker, case manager?
Well, because I have had experience working in foster care, I know some of the legal situations that we in training go over, but as a CASA it is not your responsibility to know everything that's going on regarding DCFS and the legal system. So I can be there as not an expert by any means, but having that knowledge that I can educate the advocate on what's going on with the case and why it's going this way. Also, when I'm in court, there's always representation, so you don't have to worry about the CASA not being there. Of course, we encourage our advocates to be there because, you know, when the judge can put the name with the face on the report, I really do think that makes an impact.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the kids that you serve and the age range.
You know, we serve actually quite a large spectrum of ages, from birth to 21. At 18, you're considered an adult, but within the foster care and the legal system, you can actually stay within in foster care within the system until you're 21 years old.
And when you say birth, how is that possible?
Well, there are some cases where we have a family that's involved and they have maybe, let's say, a 2- and a 4-year-old child in foster care, but the mother's pregnant. And so before that child's even born, they actually have an advocate because their siblings have an advocate.
And so they're already born at risk because they're in the system.
Absolutely.
Now, when that happens, does the child, the newborn child, have the same advocate or their own advocate as the siblings?
They would have the same advocate, which is really nice because the advocate knows the family, knows what's going on with the family, so that child is born with someone who's willing to already stand up for them.
And that's not something you ever would consider, that an unborn child would need that advocate to be born into the system, but if they end up. Now, statistics have shown that children who have a CASA are more likely to be adopted sooner or not stay in the foster care system. How does that CASA intervention help with that part of the timeline?
I think it comes down to trust. When we're dealing with these children, they're going through issues that a lot of us can't even imagine. And so when you have a constant adult figure who is coming to your home every month to say, how are you doing? And what do you like now? And what games do you like to play? I think children are more trusting and then more open to the own services they're dealing with. They're more open to when the visitation is going on, communicating with the parents. And then we're kind of cheerleaders for the parents as well. Although it's not our job to provide them services, we encourage that parenting, that positive parenting impact.
All right, we were almost out of time, but really quickly, what would be your most memorable case that you've experienced?
My most memorable case would probably be, I was working with a teenager, and when I first started working with her, I would go to her residence and she informed me that she didn't want to talk to me because there's been so many adults in her life, and what makes me any different? And I said, that's okay, but every single month I'm going to come and see you because I feel that's important. And so every month I would go see her, and month after month she would start opening up a little bit more, but then maybe kind of step back. By the end of the case, she was calling me twice a day to tell me how school was. Now, is this life-changing for her? It was life-changing for me, but she has learned that there's an adult who's always going to show up no matter what she does, and someone that she can trust.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We are out of time. That is our show for this time. I'd like to thank our guests, Debbie Blocker and Alysha Hamann from CASA Kendall County. This has been Fox Valley in Focus. I'm Cindy Bravos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.